I think at some point we'll boycott it. Like that's gonna be the only way to kind of like fight for our rights.
Sold out. The French Open has a problem nobody saw coming. Aryna Sabalenka arrived in Paris as world number 1, the favorite, the Sunshine Double winner, the woman built for this moment, untouchable on paper, completely blindsided in reality. Something dropped this week, something official. The entire tennis world felt the ground shift the moment it did. The ticket madness consuming Roland Garros right now has Alex Eala's name written across it. And Sabalenka can't believe the name isn't hers. Wednesday, May 13th.
And then there's other times where she wouldn't be feeling it, and there'd be a 17-year-old guy who's the number 1 guy in...
Roland Garros released the official doubles draw, and buried inside it was one sentence that changed the entire conversation. Melbourne warned them first, Dubai warned them, Abu Dhabi, Rome, every venue this season watched the same wave arrive. Filipinos crossing continents, stadium sections vanishing hours before her matches. Courts filling before the draw was even confirmed. The wave kept building. Now it's crashed into Paris, into Sabalenka's Grand Slam. Sabalenka read that sentence on Wednesday. The room went quiet. Subscribe right now, because that sentence is exactly where this story begins. 4 words. That is all it took. The future of world tennis. Roland Garros didn't bury it in a footnote. The tournament put it in an official published document, permanent, pointed, and aimed directly at a 20-year-old ranked 44th who has never lifted a Grand Slam singles trophy. The tennis world read that sentence and went quiet. The implication cut deep. The sport's most prestigious clay court Grand Slam had just told everyone, including the world number 1 standing on the same grounds, that the future has a different name. Sabalenka lost the 2025 Roland Garros final to Coco Gauff. She called it the worst final she ever played. She spent the entire 2026 hard court season rebuilding toward this exact moment, sweeping Indian Wells and Miami, arriving in Paris with form that made her the clear favorite. Then one published sentence reshuffled the entire narrative before the tournament even began. Let that land for a second. The reason that sentence landed so hard is because it wasn't a surprise to anyone who had been watching the 2026 season. The ticket madness around Eala didn't materialize in Paris. It has been building since March 2025, and every tournament that ignored the warning paid for it in logistics, in crowd management, and in sheer disbelief at what was happening inside their own venues. Roland Garros didn't create this story on Wednesday. The tournament simply became the latest institution forced to acknowledge what the rest of the tennis world had already accepted. Alex Eala has changed the commercial and cultural gravity of women's tennis in a way nobody inside the sport had prepared for. This is the part that requires real context, because the ticket madness around Alex Eala didn't start in Paris. It didn't even start this clay season. It started 14 months ago in Miami, and it has never stopped. March 2025. Alex Eala walks into the Miami Open ranked 141st in the world. She's a wild card. Nobody outside the Philippines gives her a realistic shot past the first round. Then she beats Jelena Ostapenko, then Madison Keys, then Iga Swiatek, the world number 2 at the time, in straight sets, 6-2, 7-5. 3 Grand Slam champions, 1 wild card, 1 tournament. It had never been done before in WTA history. The Miami crowd lost its mind. Filipino flags appeared from nowhere. The stands filled with people who had never watched a WTA match in their lives. Tournament directors looked at the attendance figures and couldn't explain what they were seeing. That was the ignition point. Everything since has been the fire spreading. By the end of 2025, Eala had reached her first WTA Tour final at Eastbourne, won her first WTA 125 title in Guadalajara, and made history at the US Open as the first Filipino player to win a Grand Slam match in the Open era. Every milestone came with a crowd that grew louder than the last. But 2026 is where the phenomenon became genuinely difficult to process. The Australian Open in January. Eala's pre-tournament press conference pulled 196,000 views on YouTube. Sabalenka's, a 2-time Melbourne champion, the world number 1, pulled 9,000. At the same tournament, on the same platform, the gap wasn't marginal, it wasn't explained by geography or timing, It was a signal. The tennis world just hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Then came the matches. Melbourne assigned Eala's first-round match to a smaller court. It wasn't enough. Fans were standing. Lines had formed outside the venue hours before her scheduled court time. Filipino supporters who had flown from Manila, from Sydney, from across Southeast Asia were pressed against barriers trying to get inside. Eala lost that first-round match to Alicia Parks. The crowd stayed. They applauded every point she won as if it were a tournament-winning shot. Parks, the actual winner, walked off court looking slightly confused about what had just happened. Dubai was next. February 2026. Eala reached the quarterfinals. Every single match sold out. Not close to sold out. Sold out. The Dubai Tennis Championships had hosted some of the biggest names in tennis for decades, and had never seen sections disappear that fast for a player outside the top 20. Tournament executive Philippe Doré later said publicly that they loved every minute of it. The commercial value of Eala showing up at a venue had become impossible to ignore. Indian Wells in March. Long lines had formed outside Stadium 3 a full 6 hours before Eala's second-round match against Diana Yastremska. Hundreds of fans in Alexandra Eala fan club shirts, Philippine flags visible from every angle of the stand. 2 matches were still being played on that court before Eala even stepped on it, and the seats were already full. Delays pushed her match until late in the evening. The desert air turned cold. Most of the crowd stayed anyway, wrapped in jackets and blankets, through 2 hours and 43 minutes of tennis. Eala won 7-5, 4-6, 7-5 just before midnight. Former ATP player Steve Johnson went on record calling her a bigger draw than Goff and Sabalenka. Sam Querrey said it was bigger than the Joao Fonseca wave, and Fonseca had been the dominant crowd story on the men's side for the better part of a year. Jessica Pegula, world number 5, reflected on playing Eala at the 2025 Miami Open and said the entire crowd had been against her. Her exact words: "Where did these people come from?" It wasn't rhetorical. She genuinely wanted to understand the mechanics of what had just happened to her at her home tournament. The answer is both simple and staggering. Over 10 million Filipinos live outside the Philippines. Approximately 1.7 million live in California alone. The global Filipino diaspora is one of the most connected, most vocal, and most travel-ready fan bases in the world, and they had been waiting for a player like Eala for decades. When she broke through, they didn't just watch from home, they showed up, physically, at every tournament, on every continent. They booked flights, they took days off work. OFWs in Rome attended every single one of Eala's Italian Open matches this month, including her practice sessions. The Philippine ambassador to Italy attended. Filipino Olympian E.J. Obiena flew in just to watch. One supporter from Batangas, living in Rome for 11 years, said some Filipinos skipped work entirely just to be in the stands. He said moments like that don't come often. He wasn't wrong. This is the infrastructure of the ticket madness Sabalenka is now facing at the French Open. It isn't manufactured, it isn't a social media illusion. It is a physically present, emotionally invested, globally mobilized fan base that has followed one player from Auckland to Melbourne to Abu Dhabi to Dubai to Indian Wells to Miami to Rome, and has now landed in Paris. Eala's clay season this year has been a genuine education. Clay is not her best surface. She acknowledges that openly. Her game, aggressive, left-handed, hard court built, requires significant adjustment on the red dirt. She lost in the first round of Stuttgart to Leila Fernandez. She exited in the second round at the Madrid Open against Elise Mertens. But Rome told a different story. She beat Magdalena Frech in 3 sets in the opening round, turning a deficit into a win by sheer force of intensity. She pushed through to the third round, a career-best clay result at this level, before losing to world number 2 Elena Rybakina 6-4, 6-3 in the round of 32. After the loss, Eala sent a 7-word message that captured exactly where her head is. There's a lot of things to work on. Not defeat, not frustration, calculation. She is building something deliberately, and the results are beginning to reflect it. Heading into Roland Garros, Eala sits at number 44 in the WTA rankings with seeding. Contention genuinely within reach. Only 6 withdrawals separate her from a seeded position in the draw. Several high-profile players, including Amanda Anisimova, Victoria Mboko in singles, and Emma Raducanu, missed the Italian Open due to illness and injury, and their French Open participation remains uncertain. The draw hasn't been confirmed. The rankings update on May 18th. The window is real. In doubles, the partnership with Mboko is confirmed and carries genuine weight. Mboko has risen from world number 333 at the start of 2025 to a career-high number 9, one of the most dramatic ranking climbs in recent WTA history. Roland Garros describing them as the future of world tennis wasn't marketing language. It was an accurate observation about where the next generation of this sport is heading. Eala beat Mboko in the 2022 US Open Girls Singles semifinals on her way to becoming the first Filipino Grand Slam junior champion. They share a history. They share an ambition. The doubles draw projects them as the 12th highest-ranked pairing in the tournament. For context, this is Eala's second French Open. Her first ended in the first round of singles last year against Emiliana Arango. The growth curve in 12 months is not subtle. Now add one more layer to everything happening at Roland Garros this week. Sabalenka is not just navigating the Eala phenomenon. She is fighting a separate battle that threatens the entire tournament's foundations. Along with Yannick Sinner, Coco Gauff, Iga Świątek, and 16 other top players, Sabalenka signed a joint statement expressing deep disappointment over French Open prize money distribution. Roland Garros generated €395 million in revenue in 2025. Prize money rose by just 5.4%. Players' share of revenue dropped to 14.3%. The demand is 22%, in line with what ATP and WTA 1000 events distribute. Sabalenka went further than the statement. She said publicly at the Italian Open that a boycott is coming if nothing changes. "Without us, there wouldn't be a tournament," she told reporters. "I feel like we deserve to be paid more." Gauff backed the position completely. Sinner said the time for silence had passed. The French Open is heading into its opening rounds with the world number 1 threatening a boycott, the prize money dispute unresolved, and a 20-year-old Filipina generating more ticket demand than anyone in the draw. 3 storylines, all live, all unresolved, all pointing at the same 2 weeks at Stade Roland Garros. Eala hasn't commented on the prize money dispute. She is 20 years old, ranked 44th, and focused entirely on clay. She told Roland Garros' own media team that she is finding her footing on the surface, that she is physically and mentally stronger than she was 12 months ago, and that the work her team has been putting in will start to show. She trained with Rafael Nadal himself in the offseason, the 22-time Grand Slam champion, choosing the young Filipina as the person on the other side of the net for his first hit since retirement. That session alone communicated something about how the tennis world views her trajectory. The question nobody has answered yet, the one that makes this French Open genuinely unpredictable, is how far Eala can actually go on this clay. Her first-round exit last year came against a player ranked 88th in the world. She was nervous. She was inexperienced at the Grand Slam main draw level. The player who arrived in Paris this year is unrecognizable from that version. She has beaten top 10 players. She has won in 3 sets under enormous pressure. She has managed fanbase chaos, media attention, and the weight of representing a nation that had never had a player at this level, all at 20 years old, without once appearing overwhelmed by it. Sabalenka is still the favorite to win Roland Garros 2026. The tennis supports that conclusion. Her form is exceptional. Her motivation is personal. Nobody should write off the world number 1 at a Grand Slam she has spent years trying to conquer. But the French Open has never seen anything quite like this before. A player outside the top 40 arriving in Paris with a fan base that has sold out venues on 4 continents. A tournament's own website describing her as the future. A world number 1 who has watched her press conference viewership, her crowd energy, and now her own Grand Slam's promotional language shift towards someone half her ranking. The ticket madness isn't a side story, it is the story. And it arrived in Paris before the first ball of the 2026 French Open was ever struck. If you made it this far, you already know this channel covers women's tennis the way it deserves to be covered. Without filters, without filler. and without backing away from the stories that actually matter. Subscribe right now if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below telling us exactly how far you think Alex Eala goes at Roland Garros this year. The draw is coming, the matches are coming, and this French Open is just getting started.